When a corrupt, anti-Trump judge humiliates JD Vance in court, he assumes he's untouchable. But when his target fights back, karma strikes swiftly, leaving the courtroom in stunned silence. Before we dive in, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. The day began typically at the federal courthouse, except for Judge Marshall Davis's unusually sour mood. "No coffee in my courtroom," he snapped at his clerk, making the young woman flinch. "And tell the defense team if they're not here in 2 minutes, I'll issue contempt charges." The packed gallery watched as Davis stormed to his bench, his face already red with irritation. Known for harsh rulings, his behavior had grown erratic lately, especially in cases involving conservatives. "Your Honor," the court clerk approached cautiously, "Vice President Vance has arrived to testify." Davis's expression darkened instantly. "Well, isn't that special?" he sneered, not bothering to mask his contempt. "Make sure he knows this isn't the Senate floor. His title means nothing here." The atmosphere shifted when JD Vance entered, carrying himself with quiet dignity and nodding respectfully to the staff. Davis glared at him, drumming his fingers impatiently. "Let's get one thing straight," Davis declared, his voice thick with disdain. "I don't care what position you hold in Washington. In this courtroom, I am the law. Clear, Mr. Vance?" The vice president's calm reply only seemed to rile Davis more. "Crystal clear, Your Honor. I'm here as a witness to the truth." "Truth?" Davis scoffed. "We'll see about that." As the defense attorney began, Davis cut in sharply. "I'm already tired of political theatrics. This isn't a campaign rally." The attorney pressed on. "Your Honor, we're simply establishing the context of Mr. Sterling's charitable." "Context?" Davis barked out a laugh. "The context is your client's accused of tax evasion. I don't need a lecture on his so-called charity." He dismissed every mention of Sterling's community work with growing hostility. "Irrelevant. Move on," he'd snap. His gavel crashing so often, the court reporter struggled to keep up. When Vance took the stand, Davis's demeanor grew even more unhinged. "Stand up straight for the oath," he growled, though Vance's posture was flawless, "and speak clearly. No political doublespeak here." "Your Honor," Vance began steadily, "I can attest to Mr. Sterling's financial transparency with the Faith and Family Foundation." "Oh, here we go," Davis interrupted, rolling his eyes. "Another conservative fairy tale about family values." The gallery shifted uneasily. Even the prosecution seemed uncomfortable with his blatant bias. Davis leaned forward, his face flushed. "I've seen enough rich conservatives hide money behind charitable facades. Your presence here doesn't impress me, Mr. Vice President. It makes me question the defendant's character more." Vance stayed composed, but his calm seemed to enrage Davis further. The judge's hands trembled as he shuffled papers, his eyes flicking nervously to certain documents. "I have here," Vance continued, "evidence of Sterling's charitable contributions, including the March Foundation meetings." "Those records are inadmissible," Davis shouted, though no objection was raised. His reaction felt oddly personal, almost panicked. "Your Honor," the defense attorney stood. "On what grounds? Don't you dare question my rulings." Davis's face turned bright red. "One more word, and you'll join your client in contempt." The prosecutor shifted awkwardly. This was beyond judicial discretion. It looked like a vendetta. "Your Honor," Vance spoke up, respectful but firm. "These documents were submitted during discovery." "Oh, were they?" Davis sneered. "And I suppose your White House connections had nothing to do with that. Let me tell you something about your kind, Mr. Vice President." "Objection, Your Honor," the defense attorney interjected. "This is inappropriate." "Silence," Davis roared, his gavel slamming so hard it echoed. "I won't be lectured about appropriateness in my court, especially not by some conservative puppet and his—" "Your Honor," Vance cut in calmly, "perhaps we should discuss the March 15th meeting." Davis's rage faltered, replaced by something like fear. His hand froze midair with the gavel. Those meetings aren't relevant," he stammered, his voice shaky, his eyes darting to a folder that had appeared that morning. "Not relevant?" Vance asked quietly. "Interesting, considering they involve charitable contributions." "Enough!" Davis slammed both hands on his bench. "One more word about those meetings, and I'll have you removed." The gallery sat in stunned silence as Davis's composure unraveled. His hands shook as he shuffled papers, trying to regain control. "In fact," he continued, his voice manic, "I'm holding you in contempt right now. You think your position protects you? You're just a Trump lackey in an expensive suit. Your Honor, Vance replied, unfazed, my position has nothing to do with this. But since you mentioned protection, perhaps we should discuss the Liberty Foundation's payments. Davis's face went pale. How dare you? I mean, what payments? His slip was obvious. Actually, Your Honor, Vance reached for his briefcase. I have bank records here. Would you like to explain the monthly deposits from offshore accounts that align with your rulings against conservatives? Shut up, Davis screamed, losing all judicial decorum. You have no right, no authority. I am the law here, not some conservative bootlicker who... Vance calmly held up a document. Your signature on these forms suggests otherwise. Davis lunged forward, pointing a trembling finger. You planted those. This is a setup, a conservative conspiracy. He caught himself, but too late. A conspiracy, Vance echoed softly. Interesting word, Your Honor, especially given your private meetings with activist groups. I won't be interrogated in my own court. Davis was nearly foaming at the mouth. You think you can waltz in with your smug face and your evidence? He spat the word like poison. Evidence, Vance continued, that shows a pattern, like the Thompson case, where a small business owner lost everything because you blocked evidence of his charitable work, just like today. Davis's laugh was wild. That conservative fraud deserved it. They all do, hiding behind faith and family values while... Or perhaps, Vance interjected, pulling another document, the Wilson hearing, where you sealed records hours after meeting Liberty Foundation reps. Davis's face twitched. How do you know about... He stopped, realizing his mistake. Know about what, Your Honor? Vance pressed. The meeting or the $100,000 in your offshore account the next day? The gallery buzzed with murmurs. Davis slammed his gavel desperately. Order! I'll have order! His voice cracked with panic. This is fabricated, a conservative plot to... Like Mrs. Anderson's case? Vance continued. A grandmother who lost her savings because you blocked her explanation. Interesting how the company suing her donated to your re-election weeks before. Shut up, Davis screamed, his composure gone. You have no authority. I am the law. He grabbed his gavel and hurled it across the room, narrowly missing his clerk. You want to talk abuse of power? I'll show you power. Officers, put this man in handcuffs now. The courtroom fell silent. The officers hesitated, torn between duty and conscience. Last chance, Mr. Vance, Davis snarled. Hand over those documents and submit, or I'll ensure you never step foot in a courtroom again. That's an interesting threat, Vance replied, opening another folder. Almost exactly what you told Sarah Mitchell before dismissing her case right after meeting CEO James Peterson. Davis went ghostly pale. What? How did you... Peterson, Vance continued, who deposited $500,000 into your Cayman account. The same Peterson who hosted a yacht meeting with 7 judges, all ruling in his favor the next week. You have no right, Davis screamed. Those records are privileged. Those conversations were private. Private like the recordings from your chambers? Vance asked softly, where you told your clerk to lose evidence exonerating 3 conservative defendants? The clerk burst into tears. He made me do it, she sobbed. He said he'd ruin my career. Silence, Davis roared, but his authority was fading. None of this is admissible. You can't prove... Actually, Vance interrupted, everything was obtained legally. Your cameras caught the midnight shredding. Your phone recorded the threats. Your signature authorized the transfers. Davis lunged for Vance's folder. Give me those files. I order you. Order denied, a new voice rang out. FBI agents strode down the aisle. This court is now under federal investigation, the lead agent announced, badge gleaming. Judge Marshall Davis, stay where you are. You can't do this, Davis shrieked, backing away. I have immunity, connections. Do you know who I am? Oh, we know exactly who you are, the agent replied, including your Liberty Foundation meetings, offshore accounts, and efforts to target conservatives. Davis's eyes darted wildly. This is a setup, a conservative plot. The only plot, Vance interjected, was your abuse of power. Every biased ruling, every backroom deal, it ends today. You planned this, Davis pointed a trembling finger. You and your Trump-loving conspirators? No, Your Honor, Vance shook his head. You set yourself up. We just gave you rope to hang yourself with. Your actions today confirmed everything. As agents approached, Davis lunged for his chambers. You don't understand, he screamed. They made me do it. The foundation has dirt on everyone. That's interesting, the agent said. Tell us more about this foundation. Davis clammed up, realizing his slip. I want my lawyer, he sneered. You'll pay for this humiliation. Speaking of payment, Vance produced another document. Perhaps you'd explain these transfers. 7 judges, all paid like you, all ruling against conservatives in coordinated cases. The gallery erupted in whispers. This wasn't just one corrupt judge. It was a network. The evidence suggests, Vance continued, a systematic effort to weaponize the judiciary. But justice isn't a weapon, Your Honor. It's a shield for all Americans. Davis stopped struggling, his face defeated as his chambers were sealed, and his clerk questioned, sobbing as she confessed to destroying evidence under his threats. Davis's walk of shame from his courtroom, handcuffed, was a potent symbol of justice served. But as agents led him away, he turned to Vance. You think this changes anything? He spat. There'll always be others like me. You're right about one thing, Vance replied. There'll always be those who abuse power, but there'll also be those who fight it. That's what makes our system work. Not your corruption, but the courage to stand against it. The aftermath was swift. Davis's arrest sparked investigations across jurisdictions. The network of corrupt judges began to collapse as evidence piled up and witnesses emerged. Sterling's case was dismissed when a new judge reviewed the evidence Davis had suppressed, finding no basis for charges. In the end, justice isn't shaped by those who control it, but by those who defend it. If you believe in truth and accountability, like the story and subscribe for more.